What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with something a little bit different. I had a number of subscribers request that I put together a quick price guide for vintage Indiana Jones action figures from the Raiders of the Lost Ark line and anything else I could find. And I tried to pull pretty much everything that was fairly pricey and already graded. Just got some general thoughts on those. And I didn't really want to make this video because I don't follow Indiana Jones action figures, although I did play with him as a child. But enough of you kept asking, so I agreed reluctantly to put this video together. I did go and see the new Indiana Jones movie. I'm not going to give any spoilers. I will say that it was certainly an improvement over Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but I question whether the movie really needed to be made. I think that it was a fairly decent send-off. It was better than mediocre. It was better than the most of the critics in terms of their reviews. I thought it was better than what a lot of people have said about it. But I didn't think it was particularly great either. You know, after going through stuff like Across the Spider-Verse and some of those kind of movies, and I'm excited about the new Mission Impossible movie, things like that. But this movie was one I wanted to take my mother to go see since I was in town visiting her. So we took the whole family, my brother and everybody. And again, I think it was better than a lot of people let on, but it certainly wasn't up to snuff relative to the original trilogy. So I'll leave it at that. It probably worth seeing, though. I think it was worth seeing, and it was a pretty good send-off at the end. So anyway, let's go ahead and dig into some vintage prices for graded, mostly graded, I think, because there's one or two that are not graded, and most of these are vintage. I think I have one graded modern prototype figure in here as well. And most of these were where the best offer was accepted, for whatever that's worth. There wasn't a lot of auctions that I found particularly interesting, but there were some pretty incredible sales prices, and I wanted to at least show you what has sold over the last 2 or 3 months. And we're going to start off with where it all started, the vintage Kenner Raiders of the Lost Ark Indiana Jones. This is a figure I had as a child, and I certainly loved it. This was a clear blister AFA 80, card 75, figure 85, blister 80, and it was a clear blister unpunched. So pretty beautiful example. It was listed for $2,800. The best offer that was accepted was $2,200. So that's a big number. That's certainly a lot, and Indiana Jones figures have definitely jumped up. You know, for a while there, AFA was loose grading these. CAS also loose grades those, and I've got examples of both of that, loose for CAS as well as AFA coming up. But they kind of stopped all loose grading, right? But I'm sure they're going to open it back up here soon, and they certainly do look really nice inside the loose graded cases. But this mint on card did sell for $2,200. Here was another one. This was an AFA 75 clear blister Indiana Jones, and the subscores were 75, 80, 85. It was listed for $1,550. The best offer that was accepted was $1,501. So you can see the price difference, $1,500 versus $2,200 to go from an AFA 75 to an AFA 80, both of them with clear blisters. This one was punched versus unpunched for the AFA 80. Loose graded. So this seller, Vaults of Yavin, we know this seller if you follow my Star Wars pricing guides. He always sells a lot on eBay, mainly loose graded Star Wars figures in very high grade. But for a little while there, he had some Indiana Jones figures that he got back from AFA with archival loose cases, brand new case style. Beautiful, beautiful examples. And this was an AFA 80 plus. It was listed for $850. The best offer on that one that was accepted was $600. And then he also had an AFA 85. So very tough to get an 85 for this particular figure. And again, archival case, new case style. It looks beautiful inside those new AFA cases. That was listed for $1038. The best offer on that one that was accepted was $850. So as you can see, the mint on cards were $1,500 to $2,200. The loose graded were $600 to $850. So that gives you a general price point on those in case you're looking. We also had this one. I had this figure as a kid as well. This was an AFA yellowed 75, although just light yellowing. And this is Indy in the German disguise or German uniform. Raiders of the Lost Ark continues to be one of my favorite movies. I put that in my top 10 pretty easily in terms of top 10 movies on my personal list, and I just love that movie. This was listed for $800. The best offer on that one that was accepted was $750. And here's a loose graded. This is the older style case when AFA used to loose grade these a long time ago. So this is an older case. U85. That one sold for $400. So $400 for a loose. $850 I've lost it now. 750. 750 for the mint on card and 400 for a U85 loose graded. The German mechanic, I specifically remember going to a Toys R Us with my mom, and I had some money in my pocket, and I already had all the other characters. So this is the guy I ended up selecting, and I actually played with it quite a bit as a child, although he's kind of a plain figure. But he kind of reminds me of me, kind of barrel-chested. I wasn't quite as strong as this guy, and still am not, but there's something about him in that fight scene that I just absolutely loved. It was just such a great fight scene. And I don't know if they've ever really captured, other than maybe in the Quest for the Holy Grail, Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail. There was that one fight scene with the German commander on the tank, where he got caught on the treads, and then Sean Connery got caught on the treads. That's the only other fight scene to my mind that really compares to that original fight scene at the airport in Raiders of the Lost Ark. But anyway, this was a yellowed 85. That one was listed for $2,000. And let's see, the best offer that was accepted was $1,450. But what's crazy is that here is an AFA 80 that was a yellowed AFA 80, and that one sold for $350. This one just closed on July 8th, so somebody drastically overpaid for this one. This was a yellowed 85 that sold for $1,450 versus a yellowed 80, both unpunched. This one sold for $350. So I would say that this guy got the better deal, even though it is a slightly lower grade. But that's a pretty massive price difference. Next up, Belosh. Belosh. It's not Belloc. It's Belosh. I love Belosh. He's one of the best villains ever. I still use that line all the time, not only in my videos, but in real life. It was not meant to be, Shelly. It was not meant to be. I just love that line, and I use it a lot with my kids. I use it with my wife. I use it when I lose an auction. So Belosh is definitely one of my favorite villains, and this was a yellowed 80 mint on card punched example. It was listed for $1,450. The best offer accepted was $1,300 on that one. So that's a big number there. And then here was a CAS loose graded example, CAS 90. That one sold, best offer that was accepted was $430. So clearly collectors love Belosh, and that's a pretty cool looking case there from CAS. And I love that character. And obviously this is the mail-away ceremonial Belosh. This was an AFA U85 because it came inside like a typical Kenner mailer box in a baggie. And so somebody sent the baggie into AFA. They took it out of the baggie and loose graded it, uncirculated 85. That one sold for $225. You can also buy this graded with the box and the baggie next to it, just like you would with any Kenner mail-away. But this was a loose graded example, U85, that came straight from a mailer box. Next up, Salah. He obviously makes an appearance. If you watch the trailers for the new Indy movie, he does make a brief appearance. I won't spoil anything. But, man, he really thinned out. I mean, he was always just a big, meaty kind of guy from Raiders of the Lost Ark and in the later movies. But he really has thinned out in old age, and it was kind of sad to see to a certain extent. But this yellowed 80 example unpunched was listed for $1,450. It sold for $1,150. The best offer accepted was $1,150 on that one. Tot, another great villain. I was terrified of him for some reason as a child. I mean, this came out in '82, so I was only 5 years old. So, and I got to watch this movie. I don't think I went to the theater. I think it was on HBO when I finally got to see it. I was probably 6 or 7. But I remember being terrified by Tot. I was more terrified of him than I was by the final scene where everybody gets their face melted off. I don't know what it was about this guy, but something about him really scared me. But anyway, that one was a mint on card, unpunched. And what's cool about this one is that, as you can see on the label here, the proof of purchase on the back was reversed. So there was an error, as you can see right there, where the proof of purchase was reversed when it was printed on the card. So it's kind of a factory error, cool factory error. But this is another figure I had as a child. It was listed for $950. The best offer on that one was $580. So a yellowed 85 for $580. I thought that was a pretty good price there for Tot. Pretty awesome villain. Streets of Cairo Adventure set. This is one I did not have, but this was a mint and seal box graded 75 plus by CAS. That one sold down in Australia for $909, which is $607 US. I didn't find any Marions, like mint on card Marions. I'm sure they're in there, but I just kind of did a quick sampling of some of the AFA graded examples. Marions are pretty expensive. Not the one that came in this box set, the little tiny figure. of Marion there. That's kind of like a static sculpture. But the actual Marion in the wedding dress, that is a very, very expensive mint on card and loose graded. But this Streets of Cairo set, again, sold for $607. The Cairo swordsman scene, that's one of the greatest scenes, as brief as it was. Apparently, Harrison Ford was getting exhausted in the heat, and he just said, "Can I just shoot him?" And the fact that the swordsman didn't know it was coming, and that he had the wherewithal in terms of acting to act like he got shot. just everything about Raiders of the Lost Ark is just awesome. I love that movie. Anyway, this was a loose graded example from CAS. It was an 85 grade. That one sold down in Australia for 220 Australian dollars, which is 147 US dollars. And then this is probably where I really spent the majority of my playtime, was with the Temple of Doom. Temple of Doom was kind of more in my wheelhouse, because at this point I was 7 years old. I went to see Temple of Doom twice in the theater, and these LJN figures that were a little bit larger really took up several years of my childhood. I had the main big villain guy, and then obviously I had Indy. I think those were the only two I had. But this figure in particular, with the kind of the whip action, with the little thing on the back, like the Thundercats figures that LJN made, where he could whip. I played with this figure until there was nothing left of it. All the paint, everything wore off. And this is just one of my favorite figures from my childhood. So that Battle-Matic action secret lever was reused on, in the Thundercats line, and I'm sure other toy lines, but I very, very vividly remember this figure. This one was ungraded, but yellowed blister, which a lot of these LJN cards did really yellow pretty easily and have not held up well. Very similar to kind of what the Return of the Jedi Kenner items for the U.S. market have done. Anyway, that one did sell for $800 plus $35 shipping. And probably the most expensive item from the toy line is the Raiders of the Lost Ark Arabian Horse. And this is one I did not have as a child, but it continues to be very, very, very pricey. And I guess they just probably did not make these in very big numbers, and the toy line didn't do very well. It's kind of crazy to think about this movie now having a toy line, just given all the violence and the kind of the horror at the end of that movie. But this was an AFA 70 example that sold for $1,200. Here was an AFA 75. I forgot to look up the list price on that one, or the sales price on that one, but it was listed for 1,430 euros, which is 1,565. So something south of 1,565 US dollars for the AFA 75. So that's a 70 for 1,200. This one probably sold around 1,400 for the 75. But the big one was this one. This was one that was sold by CIB, Collectibles Investment Brokerage, and this is the AFA 85. As good as it gets, an absolute gem, and this was a clear blister with straight 85 subscores. So this is probably the holy grail in terms of vintage Indiana Jones toy line figures. So the Arabian Horse, clear blister, straight 85 subscores, unpunched. Absolute gem. That one sold on April 16th for almost $7,000. So that just shows you the demand for this one, and truly a holy grail for Indiana Jones collectors. And then I did want to show you this one as well. This was an AFA 90 loose graded modern prototype. So if you remember back in 2008, Hasbro kind of re-released some very nicely sculpted action figures in keeping with Indiana Jones. So this is the Cairo Swordsman with sword and warrior relic, a first shot action figure prototype AFA 90. And it was listed for $400 US dollars, and it sold, best offer accepted was $300. So pretty cool items that I found just on a kind of a very casual look. And again, I don't know much about these Indiana Jones figures. I played with them a lot as a kid. I certainly don't keep up with them. I know that Chris W. over at Rogue 5 Toys at one point had the full line of loose graded vintage Raiders of the Lost Ark figures, and he even had some box sets and everything. It was a pretty incredible collection that he put together that I think he's now sold. But anyway, I just wanted to share these, and I wanted to kind of fulfill a subscriber request. I had probably a dozen of you that asked for this, so here you go. You're welcome. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back soon.